making tons of money in Schedule 1. That is one of the primary goals for pretty much every player trying out the game right now, and today I want to talk about my favorite approach to making well over $50,000 to $70,000 a day. The best part about it is a lot of what we're going to be going over today does not even require you to be high level, as we won't really be using the highest level pots, nor will we be using the highest level grow lights. I mean, for this exact method, you will need to be high enough level to have the drying racks, but that's about as high as it goes. And on top of it all, we'll be using the beginning drug in the game, good old weed. Essentially, we'll be creating an automated weed factory where the product requires no player interaction whatsoever other than resupplying the shelves, which also went ahead and made sure we did that the easy way as well, so you won't have to be resupplying very much. Maybe once every 2 to 3 days or something like that. Before we jump right into this guide, I must mention that making $70,000 a day will not apply to low-level players, as you don't really have access to the wealthy customers yet. But you can rest easy knowing you're maxing out your income by utilizing this method. Another thing I want to point out is the seed does not matter. For this video, we utilize the Granddaddy Perp, but it really doesn't matter. You can use the OG Kush or any of the other seeds you prefer. Lastly, there is of course a decent amount of upfront money necessary to get these factories going, so adjust as necessary. Of course, we'll be going over the best way to go on about this, so it's also going to be requiring the most upfront cash as well. But let's go ahead and start it off with a clean slate here on the barn. We have no furniture and no workers. The first thing we're going to be starting off with are the beds for the workers we'll be needing here in the barn. By the way, you can purchase these items we'll talk about here in any order you'd like. I'm just going down the line so it's a bit clearer to understand all the steps. Now, since we'll be filling up this barn with employees, which goes up to 10, we'll go ahead and grab 11 beds. One for each employee, of course, and one for us when we want to sleep in the barn to save on some traveling time. You can also purchase these beds in the black market, so you actually use cash rather than money in the bank, so you don't waste any unnecessary laundered money. In the barn, you can insert these beds anywhere. Just try to put them in places where they will be out of our way. I personally managed to put 9 beds upstairs, and I insert the final 2 beds downstairs where I think it will be out of our way, but we can always move these later on. So with a place for them to sleep, now it's time to start setting up the workstations. So let's go ahead and go down the line, first with planting the weed itself. For this, we have to wait until 6 p.m. to go into the black market, and we'll start off with purchasing 24 drying racks, 24 suspension racks, 24 moisture preserving pots, and 24 LED grow lights, which is the mid-tier light. Now this is very important, by the way. If you go for air pots and the full spectrum grow light, what you'll find is that the plants grow extremely quickly, and that might sound like a good thing, but it's not. It's going to create a massive bottleneck in the early stages of productions where you'll grow far more weed than you can even dry up. So you'll find your workers will have to work 24/7 on plants, since by the time they finish setting up the last plant, the first one has already finished growing, making it so that they never quite work on the drying racks as they're always doing something on the plants. So this is again going to create a massive bottleneck, and it's going to struggle moving the production line. You'll see examples here in a second. But yeah, depending on the amount of money you have, you might want to start this off slower. Like I said earlier, you could purchase, say, 8 of each instead. And if you're lower level that do not have access to all these tools, purchase the ones you are able to do so. If you can't get drying racks, ignore the step altogether until you can. The drying racks are just here so we can serve top quality weed for those end game customers that want that highest quality stuff. With these items, we head back to the barn and we'll start it off by placing the pots. So to maximize our efficiency, here's how we'll be organizing these pots and plants. We're going to create 6 different rows of 4 pots. Each 2 rows will skip 2 little blocks, which is just the length of a regular plant pot, and you can use it as reference. And then we go ahead and make another set of 2 rows just like this. Again, ignore the fact that in the gameplay I was using air pots and spectrum lights. This was my first iteration of the barn setup, but it is not the ideal one. Make sure you have the moisture preserving pots and the LED grow lights we talked about earlier. Now with this, we've got our 24 pots laid out, and we'll just complete them by placing the suspension rack over all of them and follow that up with the LED lights. At this point, we'll go into our clipboard here and we'll go ahead and bulk select all of the 24 pots. And when they're all selected, we'll go into the management menu here and we're going to be choosing the fertilizer additive. We'll go more in details as to why only the fertilizer after we go through the setup. For the next step, we're going to a store and we will be purchasing 3 trash cans, and we're going to be placing 2 of these trash cans dead in the center of each of these rows. As you see here, it will cover already enough ground to handle all of the trash these plants will create. You can go ahead and use the 3rd trash can wherever you'd like, but honestly, I don't even find it necessary. As for the drying racks, we'll be taking the leftmost part of the barn and placing all 24 drying racks in groups of 4 like this, with a little bit of space in between them. The space isn't exactly necessary for the workers as they just kind of walk right through these, but it keeps things more organized in my opinion, and it allows us to move around and use the drying racks if we need to. We'll then go ahead and select all 24 of these racks and set their target quality to maximum quality for that top quality green. We'll then go ahead and be purchasing the final workstations in our barn, the packaging stations. So for these, you can use the cheaper packaging station if you want, which we're going to be needing 4 stations total, which is going to come out to about $400 with the cheaper one. But personally, I am going to be purchasing the more expensive version here because the cheaper version has some visual glitches occur in my game personally. And honestly, I'm in no need to save money, so yeah. Do note that these don't really impact how fast something gets packaged in the hand of a worker as far as I understand. So yeah, go with the cheaper version if you want to save on some money. Back at the barn, we'll place these 4 packaging stations here in this corner. If you have somewhere else you'd like to place it, of course, feel free to do so. And now it's time to start handling storage, and things can get a little bit more complicated. We're going to be needing 16 large storage racks. Again, if you're lower level, you'll have to scale it to fit your needs. On top of these 16 large storage racks, I'd recommend purchasing a few more for your own storage. Now that might sound like a lot, and that's because it is, but it's going to save you a lot of resupplying effort and will allow for this factory to be a lot more automatic because of all of the extra storage. So as far as placing these goes, here's how I like to do mine, but feel free to do yours however you prefer. I like to place 2 large storage cabinets near each block of 8 pots. These are going to be the supply cabinets where workers will be grabbing the soil, fertilizer, and seed from the closer. So the closer it is to the pots, the faster the whole process is. I also like to make sure there's always a little bit of space for my own character to move through smoothly, as long as it doesn't harm our growth. Then I placed 2 cabinets to the left of the packaging station like this, and 2 on the right. These are going to be our finished products cabinets. Then we place 4 more here in the corner to store empty jars or baggies for our packaging station. And 2 more here on the opposite corner to store dried up buds. Again, you'll see all of this in action soon. I know it's confusing right now. As an extra step, I'll add 4 more large cabinets elsewhere just for my own personal storage, but it might have some use here soon. All right, so storage is in place, workstations are in place. Now let's get to our workers. Back to the black market, we see the employee hiring guy, and we're gonna be hiring 6 botanists, 3 handlers, and 1 cleaner. That'll run us about $14,500 up front with a daily wage of $1,900, which will cover easily with each one of these factories. So back onto the barn, let's go ahead and set up our employees. You don't even need to give their money yet until you're completely ready to go. But first, let's start off with setting up their beds. Of course, just give a bed for each one of them. Doesn't really matter which one gets what. Then after doing that, let's go ahead and grab the cleaner. He's really simple. Let's just give him the 2 trash cans that we've set up. And with this layout, the cleaner won't glitch out as nearly as much as the other setups do. So if you're used to having your cleaner getting stuck, this should resolve a lot of that issue. Now let's go back and grab the botanists, and here's what we'll have to do. Each botanist is going to be responsible for 4 pots and 4 drying racks. Try to make sure each and every botanist has the nearest drying racks to the pots to maximize their efficiency at the job. I used to do it differently, where 3 botanists had 8 pots and then 3 botanists had 8 drying racks each, but that caused a severe bottleneck in the planting part of the production, as handling the pots take dramatically more work than the drying racks do. So if you give a botanist 8 pots to handle with additives, they're going to severely slow down your production line, as they will take very long to harvest completed plants since they have so much to do. Now, if you do it like this and you split the work with half pots and half drying racks, each botanist has a lot more free time, and it alleviates a lot of that bottleneck from the early stages of production. Now, as for supplies, we make sure each of the botanists have a large storage rack that's nearest to their set of 4 pots. Once again, this will minimize wasted time and keep a steady flow going. Now, that's pretty much it for the botanists. Let's go ahead and move on to the handlers. The way I like to do it is to have 2 of these handlers handling packaging stations. One handler grabs 2 on the left and the other handler grabs 2 on the right. And the reason I like to leave one handler free is to use them as someone who strictly moves items around and causes no delay on that front. And also, 2 handlers are more than enough to package all of the products we make a day anyways. We also like to give each handler 2 packaging stations instead of just 1, because this enables us to create more routes. So if I were to have only 1 packaging station per handler, what would happen is that they would likely overfill a destination cabinet far quicker than if we have 2 packaging stations. Plus, the extra packaging station can be useful for us if we feel we want to package some of the products ourselves, even though that's not really necessary. As for these 2 handlers, we're going to be giving them the following routes. We're going to give them the empty jar storage racks and route them to their different packaging stations. And as for the 3rd handler, he is responsible for bringing the finalized dried buds onto these packaging station, and this is going to make sure the packing handlers are always working and always have product ready to be packaged. And oh, before I forget, each of the packaging station has a destination into a different large rack that's standing next to these stations. Now, at this point, all of the workers are set up and ready to go. So let's go ahead and set up the final destinations for a few workstations we left behind. Each of the pots are going to have their own individual drying rack destination. Make sure they're not overlapping, and make sure the drying rack destination you're set to is handled by the same botanist from the pot you're setting up. And finally, we select half of the drying racks and we set it up to one of the dried buds cabinet and the other half to the other cabinet. Now lastly, before we start seeing this engine in action, let's purchase the necessary supplies to get this factory going. Keep in mind, these purchases are basically the only thing you'll need to be doing to keep these factories going, so make sure you keep your supplies topped off. We can either go purchase these on the store ourselves or we can order deliveries. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to strictly use deliveries. So to top off our cabinets and start off with a full stack, we're going to be needing 320 jars. Each delivery can handle 160 jars, so let's purchase 2 deliveries of 160 jars here. And as they arrive, we store them into our empty jar cabinets, of course. After we do that, let's go ahead and put in an order for weed seeds. For these, we'll need 24 seeds per batch. So let's go ahead and try to buy a few days ahead. For how we're going to be organizing our supply cabinets, we're going to need 30 seeds per cabinet, which means we need 180 seeds here. Albert can only handle 160 seeds per delivery, so I guess we'll have to go meet up with him and buy it off of him ourselves. As far as resupplying in the future goes, you can worry about just resupplying 160 seeds at a time. This is just for the first time. So we go ahead and we meet up with Albert and we purchase our seeds and then a few extra, because why not, right? We already made the trip. So we go back to the barn and each supply cabinet gets 30 seeds, and the remaining seeds I'll store here in our personal storage to make resupplying easier later on. Now for the finishing touches, we'll get the soil and some fertilizer. Depending on your level, this will vary, but we're high enough level to get the extra long life soil, so we're going to be going with that. For the supply cabinets, we have 5 slots left per cabinet, so we're going to be grabbing 30 fertilizers and 20 extra long life soils per cabinet. The soil will last a bit longer than both the fertilizer and the seed, but that's all right. So for this, we're going to be needing 180 fertilizers and 120 soils. Anything extra is also welcome to store away for easy resupplying. Remember, we're ordering deliveries for the video, but you may want to use the black market for stuff such as soil to save on some of that bank money. And also remember that any extra is always welcome, as we can store them away on these personal storage storages for easy resupplying. By the way, I opt in for fertilizer and not PGR or speed growth, as I found the growth of the plants already yield far more than enough weed than necessary. And also it's faster than we needed as well. So with that said, we're finally all set up and it's time to see this machine in action. In the early stages, right after releasing these factories, you'll notice the botanists will prioritize their plants a lot over the dry racks, and that's just how they work. But don't worry, during their workflow, there are always gaps where they dry the buds as necessary, especially as the days go on. But as we can see here, our little guy will prioritize the plants, and after all the plants are set up and growing, he'll go ahead and work on the drying racks. And lastly, after he's done with working on the drying racks, he'll move the finalized buds onto the storage rack we needed to. If we were using air pots and full spectrum lights, they'd get in a loop of growing plants and never actually work on the drying racks, as you can see here in the gameplay, which is why we avoid air pots and the full spectrum lights. Despite that though, the drying racks is always going to be somewhat of a bottleneck on the production, as that takes 12 hours per stack of 20 buds, so expect that to always be a bottleneck. That is very normal. As the dried buds arrive onto our destination, our handler will constantly refill the packaging station with those buds. As our packing handlers constantly work on finishing up those products, the handler will keep refilling it, and as they do that, they go ahead and put the finalized products on the racks we set those tables to, and voila, we're ready to sell in large quantities. And that's going to be pretty much our barn setup. This weed factory is going to be yielding us a total of 75 to 80 jars a day, which is about 400 buds a day without any player interaction whatsoever. If we actually jump in and help out, such as packaging buds or using the dry racks, we can actually push that a little bit further. When we go over to the docks, we can essentially do the same exact thing as the barn. I have a similar setup with just a few changes, and right now it's just slightly worse than my current barn, but it still yields me easily 70 to 80 jars a day. So we're talking about 750 buds per day when combining both the docks and the barn's weed production. That is more than enough to supply endgame customers and orders. The player himself, not counting the dealers, sell about 350 buds per day, give it or take, on endgame, which leaves us with an extra 400 buds per day, which is about 80 jars, which of course we want to hand those 400 extra buds to dealers, and they'll pretty much sell all of those no problem. As far as the other properties goes, you could transform the bungalow into a mini weed factory as well, but personally I haven't. Feel free to do so if you want to though. I'm currently keeping my bungalow here inactive as I'm kind of waiting for some quality of life changes to the game to make mixing worth it, and I'll transform it into my mixing factory. But for now, it's still my old meth house. However, as for the sweatshop, I actually try to get some value out of this small place. I have one handler here which works 24/7 on a brick press. Essentially, I'll just bring excess goods into here and either unpackage the weed myself from finalized jar products, or occasionally bring them as buds as well and have this guy break them up for me. This is just to save some space and some storage and make life a bit easier when handing bricks onto dealers to get them to sell our excess product. This step is extra though, and I only do it if I have time, but oftentimes I'm just kind of going around making sure all the shelves are nice and topped off until maybe there's some quality of life changes that can make that automatic as well. So this setup finishes off making anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000 a day, depending how well supplied your dealers are. Of course, that's far more money than you need in this game anyways. In one day, you essentially make enough money to buy all of the end game stuff. But yeah, either way, I hope this video is helpful to some of you guys trying to get a crazy farm going on. I appreciate all you guys being here, and I'll be catching you guys on the next one. Peace.